Percy Fawcett. Percy Harrison Fawcett DSO, August 18, 1867, during or after 1925, was a British geographer, artillery officer, cartographer, archaeologist, and explorer of South America. Fawcett disappeared in 1925, along with his eldest son, Jack, and one of Jack's friends, Raleigh Rimmell, during an expedition to find his name for an ancient lost city which he and others believed existed in the jungles of Brazil. Biography. Early life. Percy Fawcett was born on August 18, 1867 in Torquay, Devon, England, to Edward Boyd Fawcett and Myra Elizabeth, née McDougall. Fawcett received his early education at Newton Abbot Proprietary College, alongside the sportsman and journalist Bertram Fletcher Robinson. Fawcett's father, who had been born in India, was a Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, RGS, while his elder brother, Edward Douglas Fawcett, 1866–1960, was a mountain climber, an Eastern occultist, and the author of philosophical books and popular adventure novels. Fawcett attended the Royal Military Academy, Woolwich as a cadet, and was commissioned as a lieutenant of the Royal Artillery on July 24, 1886. On January 13, 1896, he was appointed adjutant of the 1st Cornwall, Duke of Cornwall's, Artillery Volunteers, and was promoted to captain on June 15, 1897. He later served in Hong Kong, Malta, and Trincomalee, Ceylon, where he met his future wife Nina Agnes Patterson, whom he married in January 1901 after having previously ended their engagement. They had two sons, Jack, born 1903, and Brian, 1906–1984, and one daughter, Joan, 1910–2005. Fawcett joined the RGS in 1901, in order to study surveying and mapmaking. Later, he worked for the British Secret Service in North Africa while pursuing the surveyor's craft. He served for the War Office on Spike Island, County Cork from 1903 to 1906, where he was promoted to major on January 11, 1905. He became friends with authors H. Rider Haggard and Arthur Conan Doyle. The latter used Fawcett's Amazonian field reports as an inspiration for his novel The Lost World. Early expeditions. Fawcett's first expedition to South America was in 1906. He was seconded for service there on 2nd of May, when at the age of 39 he traveled to Brazil to map a jungle area at the border of Brazil and Bolivia at the behest of the Royal Geographical Society. The society had been commissioned to map the area as a third party unbiased by local national interests. He arrived in La Paz, Bolivia in June. While on the expedition in 1907, Fawcett claimed to have seen and shot a 62-foot, 19 meters, long giant anaconda, a claim for which he was ridiculed by scientists. He reported other mysterious animals unknown to zoology, such as a small cat-like dog about the size of a foxhound, which he claimed to have seen twice, and the giant Apizaka spider which was said to have poisoned a number of locals. Fawcett made 7 expeditions between 1906 and 1924. He was mostly amicable with the locals through gifts, patience, and courteous behavior. In 1908, he traced the source of the Rio Verde, Brazil, and in 1910 made a journey to Heath River, on the border between Peru and Bolivia, to find its source, having retired from the British Army on 19th of January. After a 1913 expedition, he supposedly claimed to have seen dogs with double noses. These may have been double-nosed Andean tiger hounds. Based on documentary research, Fawcett had by 1914 formulated ideas about a lost city he named Z, somewhere in the Mato Grosso region of Brazil. He theorized that a complex civilization once existed in the Amazon region and that isolated ruins may have survived. Fawcett also found a document known as Manuscript 512, written after explorations made in the Sertão of the state of Bahia, and housed at the National Library of Rio de Janeiro. It is believed to be by Portuguese bandeirante João da Silva Guimarães, who wrote that in 1753 he discovered the ruins of an ancient city that contained arches, a statue, and a temple with hieroglyphics. The city is described in great detail without providing a specific location. This city became a secondary destination for Fawcett, after Z. See Fawcett's own book Exploration Fawcett. At the beginning of the First World War, Fawcett returned to Britain to serve with the army as a reserve officer in the Royal Artillery, volunteering for duty in Flanders, and commanding an artillery brigade despite being nearly 50 years old. He was promoted from major to lieutenant colonel on March 1, 1918, and received 3 mentions in dispatches from Douglas Haig, in November 1916, November 1917, and November 1918, and was also awarded the Distinguished Service Order in June 1917. After the war, Fawcett returned to Brazil to study local wildlife and archaeology. In 1920, he made a solo attempt to search for Z, but ended it after suffering from a fever and shooting his pack animal. Final expedition. In 1925, with funding from a London-based group of financiers known as the Glove, Fawcett returned to Brazil with his eldest son Jack and Jack's best and longtime friend, Raleigh Rimmell, for an exploratory expedition to find C. Fawcett left instructions stating that if the expedition did not return, no rescue expedition should be sent lest the rescuer suffer his fate. Fawcett was a man with years of experience traveling, and had taken equipment such as canned foods, powdered milk, guns, flares, a sextant, and a chronometer. His travel companions were both chosen for their health, ability, and loyalty to each other. Fawcett chose only 2 companions in order to travel lighter and with less notice to native tribes, as some were hostile towards outsiders. On April 20, 1925, his final expedition departed from Cuiabá. In addition to his 2 principal companions, Fawcett was accompanied by 2 Brazilian laborers, 2 horses, 8 mules, and a pair of dogs. The last communication from the expedition was on May 29, 1925, when Fawcett wrote, in a letter to his wife delivered by a native runner, that he was ready to go into unexplored territory with only Jack and Raleigh. They were reported to be crossing the Upper Xingu, a southeastern tributary river of the River Amazon. The final letter, written from Dead Horse Camp, gave their location and was generally optimistic. Many people assumed that local Indians killed them, as several tribes were nearby at the time: the Kalapalos, the last tribe to have seen them, the Arumas, the Suyas, and the Zavantes whose territory they were entering. According to explorer John Hemming, Fawcett's party of 3 was too few to survive in the jungle, and his expectation that his Indian hosts would look after them was likely to have antagonized them by failing to bring any gifts to repay their generosity. 20 years later, a Kalapalo chief called Comitsi told his people how the unwelcome strangers were killed, but others have thought they got lost and died of starvation, and the bones provided by Comitsi turned out not to be those of Fawcett. Edmar Morel and Nilo Veloso reported that Comitsi's predecessor, Kalapalo's chief Izarari, had told them he had killed Fawcett and his son Jack, seemingly by shooting them with arrows after Fawcett allegedly attacked him and other Indians when they refused to give him guides and porters to take him to their Chavant enemies, and Rolf Blomberg said Izarari had told him that Raleigh Rimmell had already died of fever in a camp of Curicuro Indians. A somewhat different version came from Orlando Villaspoas, who reported that Izarari had told him that he had killed all 3 white men with his club the morning after Jack Fawcett had allegedly consorted with one of his wives, when he claimed that Percy Fawcett had slapped him in the face after the chief refused his demand for canoes and porters to continue his journey. The Kalapalo have an oral story of the arrival of 3 explorers which states that the 3 went east, and after 5 days the Kalapalo noticed that the group no longer made campfires. The Kalapalo say that a very violent tribe most likely killed them. However, both of the younger men were lame and ill when last seen, and there is no proof that they were murdered. It is plausible that they died of natural causes in the Brazilian jungle. In 1927, a nameplate of Fawcett's was found with an Indian tribe. In June 1933, a theodolite compass belonging to Fawcett was found near the Baixari Indians of Mato Grosso by Colonel Aniceto Botelho. However, the nameplate was from Fawcett's expedition 5 years earlier and had most likely been given as a gift to the chief of that Indian tribe. The compass was proven to have been left behind before he entered the jungle on his final journey. Dead Horse Camp. Dead Horse Camp, or Fawcett's Camp, is one of the major camps that Fawcett made on his final journey. This encampment was his last known location. From Dead Horse Camp, Fawcett wrote to his wife about the hardships that he and his companions had faced, his coordinates, his doubts in Raleigh Rimmell, and Fawcett's plans for the near future. He concludes his message with, "You need have no fear of any failure." One question remaining about Dead Horse Camp concerns a discrepancy in the coordinates Fawcett gave for the camp. In the letter to his wife, he wrote, "Here we are at Dead Horse Camp, latitude 11 degrees 43 south and longitude 54 degrees 35 west. The spot where my horse died in 1920, 11 degrees 43 S 54 degrees 35 W, 11.717 degrees south 54.583 degrees west, minus 11.717, minus 54.583. However, in a report to the North American newspaper Alliance, he gave the coordinates as 13 degrees 43 S 54 degrees 35 W, 13.717 degrees south 54.583 degrees west, minus 13.717, minus 54.583. The discrepancy may have been a typographical error. However, he may have intentionally concealed the location to prevent others from using his notes to find the lost city. It may have also been an attempt to dissuade any rescue attempts. Fawcett had stated that if he disappeared, no rescue party should be sent because the danger was too great. Posthumous controversy and speculations. Henry Coston's opinion. Explorer Henry Coston accompanied Fawcett on 5 of his previous expeditions. Coston expressed his doubt that Fawcett would have perished at the hands of native Indians, as he typically enjoyed good relations with them. He believed that Fawcett had succumbed to either a lack of food or exhaustion. Rumors and unverified reports. During the ensuing decades, various groups mounted several rescue expeditions, without success. They heard only various rumors that could not be verified. While a fictitious tale estimated that 100 would-be rescuers died on several expeditions attempting to discover Fawcett's fate, the actual toll was only one, a sole man who ventured after him alone. One of the earliest expeditions was commanded by American explorer George Miller Dyatt. In 1927 he claimed to have found evidence of Fawcett's death at the hands of the Alawique Indians, but his story was unconvincing. From 1930-31, Aloha Wanderwell used her seaplane to try to land on the Amazon River in the Mato Grosso to find him. After an emergency landing and living with the Bororo tribe for 6 weeks, Aloha and her husband Walter flew back to Brazil, with no luck. A 1951 expedition unearthed human bones that were found later to be unrelated to Fawcett or his companions. Villaspoas story. Danish explorer Arne Falk wrote a journey to the Mato Grosso during the 1960s. In a 1991 book, he wrote that he learned of Fawcett's fate from Orlando Villaspoas, who had heard it from one of Fawcett's murderers. Allegedly, Fawcett and his companions had a mishap on the river and lost most of the gifts they'd brought along for the Indian tribes. Continuing without gifts was a serious breach of protocol, since the expedition members were all more or less seriously ill at the time. The Kalapalo tribe they encountered decided to kill them. The bodies of Jack Fawcett and Raleigh Rimmell were thrown into the river. Colonel Fawcett, considered an old man and therefore distinguished, received a proper burial. Falkrona visited the Kalapalo tribe and reported that one of the tribesmen confirmed Villaspoas' story about how and why Fawcett had been killed. Fawcett's bones. In 1951, Orlando Villaspoas, activist for indigenous peoples, supposedly received the actual remaining skeletal bones of Fawcett and had them analyzed scientifically. The analysis allegedly confirmed the bones were Fawcett's, but his son Brian Fawcett, 1906 to 1984, refused to accept this. Villaspoas claimed that Brian was too interested in making money from books about his father's disappearance. Later scientific analysis confirmed that the bones were not Fawcett's. As of 1965, the bones reportedly rested in a box in the flat of one of the Villaspoas brothers in São Paulo. In 1998, English explorer Benedict Allen went to talk to the Kalapalo Indians, said by Villaspoas to have confessed to having killed the 3 Fawcett expedition members. An elder of the Kalapalo, Vejuvi, claimed during a filmed BBC interview with Allen that the bones found by Villaspoas 45 years before were not really Fawcett's. Vejuvi also denied that his tribe had any part in the Fawcett's disappearance. No conclusive evidence supports either statement. Russian documentary. In 2003, a Russian documentary film, The Curse of the Inca's Gold, Expedition of Percy Fawcett to the Amazon, Russian, / was released as a part of the television series Mysteries of the Century. Among other things, the film emphasizes the recent expedition of Oleg to the presumed approximate place of Fawcett's last whereabouts and Oliv's findings, impressions and presumptions about Fawcett's fate. Commune in the Jungle. On March 21, 2004, the British newspaper The Observer reported that television director Misha Williams, who had studied Fawcett's private papers, believed that Fawcett had not intended to return to Britain but rather meant to found a commune in the jungle based on theosophical principles and the worship of his son Jack. Williams explained his research in some detail in the preface to his play Amazonia, first performed in April 2004. Grand's Lost City of Z. In 2005, The New Yorker staff writer David Grann visited the Kalapalo tribe and reported that it had apparently preserved an oral history about Fawcett, among the first Europeans the tribe had ever seen. The oral account said that Fawcett and his party had stayed at their village and then left, heading eastward. The Kalapalos warned Fawcett and his companions that if they went that way they would be killed by the fierce Indians who occupied that territory, but Fawcett insisted on going. The Kalapalos observed smoke from the expedition's campfire each evening for 5 days before it disappeared. The Kalapalos said they were sure the fierce Indians had killed them. The article also reports that a monumental civilization known as Kuikugu may have actually existed near where Fawcett was searching, as discovered recently by archaeologist Michael Heckenberger and others. Grann's findings are further detailed in his book The Lost City of Z, 2009. Film adaptation of Grann's book. Allegation of racism and dangerous incompetence. In 2017, explorer John Hemming criticized the publicity for the movie The Lost City of Z for claiming that Fawcett was one of Britain's greatest explorers, arguing that this was an insult to the many true explorers, and that Fawcett was a racist, a nutter, and a dangerous incompetent who never discovered anything, but caused the loss of many lives. Works in popular culture nonfiction fiction. Works in popular culture nonfiction fiction. Works in popular culture